Hello and welcome to this Project in a Box video. This video is going to be something slightly different. We're going to do a market review of planning software. So it's a bit trite, I guess, but if you fail to plan, you plan to fail. You need to plan to have a successful project. Even agile projects should be planned and have a plan at the heart of them. So everybody should be planning. There's been a rise of project management software over the last decade or so. It's been very diverse. Some of it is totally plan centered. Some of it really almost dismisses the plan. There's quite a lot of online tools nowadays, sort of card management. Some of them don't even have a Gantt chart in. It can't really be project management without an element of planning and task sequencing, and the Gantt chart is really very much at the heart of all that. So we can have a look at 5 tools that you should know about and should consider when you're looking at the tool that you want to use for your planning. So this is primarily focused around the plan and the management of the plan rather than other aspects of project management. We will talk about single versus multi-user aspects of that, and we will talk about perhaps extending up beyond some of that planning functionality, but focusing mainly on the core idea of the plan. So we're going to have a look at these different categories against our 5 different tools. And we're going to start with undoubtedly the one that, if you've heard of one, you'll have heard of this one, Microsoft Project. It is, it was one of the forerunners of project management software, and it stayed pretty much at the fore up till today. It is, no one ever got sacked for buying IBM. It's the thing that everybody uses, or most people have used in the past. And that's because it, broadly, it's pretty good. It certainly, as we work our way down the list of things here, we can see it ticks most of the categories that we might set for it. Core Gantt capabilities, running a Gantt chart, setting up tools and dependencies and things like that. Yes, of course it has that. They all have that. We wouldn't be talking about them otherwise. Resourcing capabilities, assigning resources to your tasks, etc. Yes, of course it has that. And not only does it have that, but it has lots of different options for resource leveling against tasks, or resource setting against tasks. So it's really quite rich in that area, and it allows you to support budget cost build-up, so assigning costs against the resources and fixed costs as well, and building those up into the overall cost of a project. It doesn't, though, surprisingly, have actual cost collection. It does support a model for looking at costs based on percentage complete, which feeds its own value later on. But it doesn't allow you to collect it in a sort of timesheety type way of the actual costs incurred against the task, which we're quite surprised about. When it comes to advanced planning elements, things like critical path, baseline management, it does all of those, of course. It also does earned value management, and does that quite well. It also provides some other displays, like a timeline display. We've got a category here of import-export with Microsoft Project because it is the most commonly used tool. It's the one a lot of people will provide plans to you in. And therefore, for other tools, we're interested in, can you read a Microsoft Project plan in, and can you send something out that can be used in Microsoft Project? Here, of course, it's Microsoft Project, so it does that. But we also have a category for import-export with Excel/CSV type data files, and in fact, yes, you can do that as well. So you can receive inputs from other tools if they're appropriately formatted and drop them into Microsoft Project. It's quite customizable. In fact, it's very customizable. There's lots of different fields you can add to its data model, and you can put your own custom ones in as well, which is really useful if you're starting to get into the richness of wanting to do slightly strange things. It doesn't support risk and issue management. If we're thinking purely about planning, that's not an issue, but more often than not, we're thinking about project controls, and tasks have risks and issues associated with them, and risks and issues are generally around the tasks that you're doing on your project. So interlinking all that can be really quite powerful for your project controls as a whole. It supports lots of different languages. It allows you to do some filtering and analysis of the plan, which is pretty good. It's not the richest, but it's not bad. It takes a little bit of getting used to how to do it and where to find it in the interface. And that's a point we're going to come back to about Microsoft Project. Its reporting has got quite good, actually. It's pretty rich and you can customize it. It used to be very simple, and in fact there was always a problem with Microsoft Project of sharing Gantt charts with other people. You could produce a printout of it, but it was never very comprehensive or seemed to quite do the job, which is why you were always having to push to share the file. And that's still a little bit the case, but it's got better, definitely. It does have full extensibility, and by that I mean we're talking here about essentially Microsoft Project Professional, the desktop edition. It has extensibility up into Project Server, which allows you to then interlink lots of plans together and share access to them amongst a group of people. That's what we're thinking of by extensibility, moving into group working and working above and beyond the sort of project type levels. And it has good support service as well, but it's expensive. Enterprise Edition, the current version, about £600 plus. If you want to use older versions, you can often buy those much cheaper. And there's a standard edition as well, but that doesn't offer the extensibility options. So you pay for what you get. It's very heavily featured. It's expensive. If you're producing Microsoft Project plans and you're not just consuming them yourself, you're often wanting to share them with other people, then if other people want to open Microsoft Project plans, they'll either have to have a Microsoft Project license, hence expensive, or you'll have to share that out in some other format, probably using one of the other tools that we're going to talk about later as a possibility. But you've got a more complicated scenario like that to deal with. The main issue with Microsoft Project, and I like it, I've been using it for 20 years, is that it's complex. I still don't feel as though I know it totally. I have to try and fight my way through help to find certain things, or I have to go out on YouTube and check out other people's videos on how to do certain things. It is a complex piece of software. If it's your first introduction to planning software, you are probably going to be overwhelmed, and to get anything meaningful out of it, you will have to do some training, some formal training. It is a complex piece of software. It has probably 60-70% of it is stuff that most people will never use. I'll use a couple of features here, somebody else uses a couple of features there. It's very, very rich. That's great if you want to do very big complex things, something very specialist, but for most projects it really is a little bit OTT. It's a good thing to compare against, because it's a thing most people, or a lot of people, will have experienced or seen and have mixed positive or negative feedback about it. So now we're going to look at 4 things that sort of compare to that. So the first one is Gantt Project. This is a freeware application developed by a community of users over quite a period now, probably 15 years. Of course, it has core Gantt capabilities and resourcing capabilities, or we wouldn't be talking about it. It's not as rich as Microsoft Project in terms of the types of way you can apply resourcing to tasks, but then again, nothing is. It doesn't actually have quite such good cost build-up from the tasks either, and it doesn't have cost collection. It does, though, have good advanced planning, so it offers both critical path and baseline against the tasks that you set up in your plan. So that's really quite good. It doesn't offer earned value, doesn't have so many extra displays, and it certainly doesn't have a timeline type display. It does offer import-export with Microsoft Project and Excel, although it won't do all the latest versions of Microsoft Project, so you've got to have fairly old Microsoft Project files to do that. If you're in Microsoft Project, of course, you can then save it back to an earlier version of Microsoft Project and then use that file to import into Gantt Project, but that's a bit of a pain in the bum, and you might lose some of the more advanced features of Microsoft Project, like its more recent resourcing application to tasks, for example. Gantt Project is also customizable, not to the degree Microsoft Project is, but not bad. It doesn't do risk and issue management. It is multilingual, not entirely, but it supports a number of different languages, and as its community-led product, I believe it also has translation files, so you can do your own languages if you want to. Um, no filtering and analysis, and a fairly basic sort of reporting capability. Unlike everything else here, actually, it doesn't have an extensibility. It is a standalone personal tool. They offer some sort of networking edit lock type thing, which is going to be pretty tricky for most people to try and set up, and really isn't what we mean by extensibility. So it doesn't have that, which makes it a little bit of a dead end. It is supported by its community user, and actually quite community users, and quite well. There's a good forum for support with it, and it's completely free. It's freeware. If you're techie, you can get involved in the development of it. If you want an interesting new feature, you can, be involved in producing and adding that on. So it is quite. I mean, you don't have to be techie to use it. It just installs. You can download it free and install it. You don't even have to register your name. And it has lots and lots of users, and I've used it in the past, and it's for a basic planning tool with some of these extra facilities, if they're in the particular area you're interested in, it's not bad, but it is a little bit of a dead end, and its interface is pretty clunky. It looks like Microsoft Project used to look 12 years ago, something like that. The next one is Project Libre, and it's also a freeware application, so pretty similar to Gantt Project in many ways, but subtle variations on those themes. So firstly, it's a much nicer interface. It looks more like a modern piece of software, and I would say it more closely matches the Microsoft Project interface. So if you're familiar with using Microsoft Project, you'll probably find the switch to Libre really quite easy. So it offers, of course, all the core things, Gantt charts, resourcing. Again, it doesn't do the full range of resourcing applications or weightings that Microsoft Project does. It does have a better cost build-up model, though. Again, no actual cost collection. In terms of the advanced facilities, it doesn't offer critical path, but it does offer baselining. And it has an earned value management. So we're starting to see some distinction in terms of which way they've taken their community developments. It has pretty good import-export with Microsoft Project, but again, it's not fully compatible all the way to present, but it doesn't offer import-export with Excel CSV, and it isn't really customizable. A little bit perhaps, but not in the way that we were thinking about with the earlier two products. Of course, no risk and issue management because they're all fully plan focused, and it offers a number of different languages. Again, some reporting, pretty similar to Gantt Project actually, and again, no filtering and analysis really to speak of. Now, in terms of extensibility, they are talking on their website lots about having a multi-user version of this, a bit like Project Server Mimic. It's mimicking matching the Microsoft Project model. So a sort of Project Server type thing, which will be a paid service. So you'll be able to use Libre as a desktop entry type tool, and then link that into a paid service central system. They're talking about that coming soon. There is no date for that yet, though, but coming soon. A number of people complain that the support service isn't as good as you get on Gantt Project. So, and I think that's probably the case from what I've seen. But it is completely free. So this offers some slightly different things. Stronger in some areas, not so strong in other areas. But it doesn't quite feel like a dead end. It feels more modern. The application, the interface is definitely nicer. And like I say, if you're coming from Microsoft Project, you'll find that a fairly easy transition. And its extensibility model, which it says is coming soon, is similar to that as well. So, that's pretty good, I would say. The next one is Team Gantt, and this is quite a different beast. This is a service, so this isn't standalone software. This is a software as a service you sign up to, hosted centrally by the Team Gantt providers. So all your data will be hosted on their server. You will need internet access to be able to access it. So you can't work standalone on a laptop in the field unless you've got internet access back to the server. But it does mean you could potentially work on it from any device that you want to, phones, tablets, etc., of course, with internet access. Now, there is, just jumping to the end, we're comparing here their typical service model, which is £25 a month per user. They do have a free model, but it's very limited and wouldn't go much beyond the first two items here in our order of Gantt chart and resourcing capabilities. It's something like one free project for 3 users, and with very basic functionality. So it's a taster really, rather than a fully usable thing. So we're looking here at one of the commercial offerings, where you pay per user per month. And of course it provides the core things. It doesn't really, again, have quite the same resourcing levels as Microsoft Project, but nobody else does. Cost build up, no actual cost collection. It runs baselining, but not critical path. No earned value management. As we come down, rather a big issue is you can't import-export from Microsoft Project. You can from Excel, but not from Microsoft Project. And most people are often coming from Microsoft Project, so that is a bit of an issue as well. Not really as customizable as often many of the SaaS tools are not, because they are an absolutely standard vanilla thing. Everybody's getting the same thing. No risk and issue management, actually, which is a bit of a surprise, because Team Gantt does offer some other project management type capabilities. It has document management in it, for example. But it doesn't really offer risk and issue management very well, which is a bit of a surprise. Doesn't appear to be multilingual. You may get some browser type translations, but we couldn't see anything about that as we looked through it. Does have some filtering analysis, however, and reporting, which is reasonable. Actually, it's a level above what you'd get with the freeware tools. Say extensibility, we've said it's limited, because it sort of already is extensible, I guess, because it's fundamentally a multi-user platform. You're going to pay for all your extra users, and at quite a rate, £25 a month. But it doesn't really go on into the sort of functionality that you might expect. So it's not quite as rich as, for example, Project Server would be in terms of the extra functionality that you'll get extending. It is supported, and we've talked about the cost a bit. So in terms of a comparison of these, Team Gantt is a different sort of beast entirely. It means you can get at your data anywhere, and you can share it with people fundamentally from the get-go, but it has really quite a restricted set of capabilities within it, and it is very structured. You won't be able to personalize it very far. So now we're going to look at the last thing, which is the Project in a Box Planner tool. So this is completely free application, but it isn't freeware. It's developed by Project in a Box. We make it freely available for anyone to register, download and use, and it will always be free for life. We're never going to charge for it, but it isn't freeware. It's built by our development team. It's supported by our development team. We don't make it available as open source code. And that's because we reuse many of its interfaces in our multi-user platforms as well. So coming down here, we've got a pretty good coverage of ticks, core Gantt capabilities and resourcing capabilities. Yes, of course, we don't do the same number of resourcing application models that Microsoft Project does, but nobody does. We do cost build-up, and we also do actual cost collection, so you can fill in essentially like a timesheet for your tasks, recording the work that's actually the time that's actually been spent on them and the amount of fixed cost that's actually been expended as you're working through the tasks. And that allows us to produce a sort of simple earned value figure. It's not full earned value management, but it's a simple one that we call progress cost, which is an indicator of where you are in terms of where you should be against progress on the project for cost against percentage complete, if you like. In terms of advanced planning facilities, we don't offer baselining directly within Planner tool. Critical path is coming soon. That's something we're working on for it at the moment. And you can do baseline comparison of milestones as you load your plans up into the main multi-user application, the extensibility part of it. But that's not built into Planner itself. We also offer a timeline display and a calendar display for for users to be able to see their tasks in a different sort of, and milestones in a different sort of way. We have import export with Microsoft Project, and that goes much further than the freeware applications do, so through to the current version of Microsoft Project. Likewise, import export with CSV, and actually the planner source, although we don't let the source code of the application be shared, the data files are fundamentally XML files, so that means they are an open format. You can go and look at them and play with them and do things with them if you want to. Planner is customizable in quite a lot of different ways. You can customize the way the calculations work. You can customize the risk and issue models that we're going to talk about in a minute, and the look and feel of it, and what works in the reporting and all those sorts of things. So it does have risk and issue management. It is a project controls tool. That means resource lists are shared across all of those aspects. You can start to standardize the way that your data is collected and intermingled between those three different areas. We offer it multilingually. We do that with a language file. A number of language files are shipped with the application, and you can also create your own ones if you want to, a bit like the sort of freeware community, and we've had quite a few customers creating them and providing them back to us for us to ship with the application. The system has quite a rich filtering and analysis, much more akin to Microsoft Project, and perhaps even a little bit further beyond what Microsoft Project does, with an idea of views, which are filters and display settings that you can personalize to get the tasks that you want to see, and the display of the data that goes with them. So it's designed very much with that in mind. Likewise, you can take those views of data and use them into reporting. So there's some pretty good reporting coming out of Planner. It's not as rich as Microsoft Project, but of course, if you upload your plan into the multi-user version of Microsoft of Projects in a Box, like Live Edition, for example, and hence the extensibility, you can link that across multiple projects. You can do all the resource demand type histograms, and intermingle that with all the other sorts of data that you're collecting for sort of more professional, full-blooded reporting. Although it's a free application, we support it exactly the same as we do our commercial platforms, and as I say, it's free forever. It's not fundamentally freeware, but we have made the commitment that we will make it free forever. And that means that, unlike Microsoft Project, when you develop a plan in Planner or Gantt chart or Libre, you can make it available to your colleagues, and they can download that free application and work on the plan themselves. In Microsoft Project, you're often sending them a picture of it, or you're sending them a Microsoft Project file, and they're having to find some other tool like this that they can then perhaps open it with, but may not be able to send it back, and all sorts of complications like that ensue. So, I mean, this is just a snapshot of the planning tools market. There are, hundreds, perhaps even thousands of project management software applications. The vast majority of them include an element of planning within them. We're focusing here on some commonly used popular tools which are predominantly about planning, predominantly about your plan rather than a multi-user environment of plans. So hopefully you found that interesting. I'm not going to give you this is the one you should use, because it's absolutely a contextual thing. It's horses for courses. There are some people that will Microsoft Project will be absolutely the right thing for it, always has been, and it always will be. That's not because they're blinkered, it's because they're doing the sorts of projects with the sorts of complexity that needs that expensive software and all that functionality. And they'll know it well enough to be able to use it all. But for 80% of the project plans that we see, in fact we see our main project in a box tool like Live Edition will accept directly a feed from Microsoft Project and from Planner and from Excel. And so we see a lot of Microsoft Project files from customers. And 80% of the Microsoft Project files that we see don't use all that extra functionality. They could have been written in Gantt Project, in Project Libre, or in Planner, and they would have got exactly the same result, but they're using Microsoft Project. 80% of plans are like that. So people are using Microsoft Project and buying it for all that extra functionality, and then not using it. Maybe it's because they've not been trained well enough to find it and use it. Maybe it's just because they don't need it because their project isn't as complex as that. But that's the case. Lots of people using Microsoft Project don't need it. And there are lots of other alternate tools that you could use instead. And so that's what we're talking about here. So some people, Microsoft Project is absolutely right. Other people, other tools will be right. And there's a range of those here. You can use that as a sort of bit of a shopping list to work out what's necessary for you and go off and try those out. So I hope you found that helpful. We, of course, also have other videos on our site about planning specifically, and in particular about getting data in and out of Microsoft Project and Planner, and I'll provide the links to those here. Okay, thank you very much.